Pull up a chair, guys and gals, because we're about to have us a little come to Jesus. I waited all day to get home from work and buy Dawn of Fear, a retro throwback 90s survival horror game full of fixed camera angles, tank controls, zombies, creepy soundtrack, the works. And let me tell you kids, I bought it. I fucking bought it. For those of you who have never heard of this hot garbage fire but clicked on this video out of curiosity to see what it was all about, I apologize. I like to consider myself a professional when it comes to entertainment, and unfortunately Dawn of Fear does not fall in the category of entertaining. Let me explain. What is Dawn of Fear? Dawn of Fear is supposed to be a video game, but interestingly enough is the digital equivalent to paying somebody $20 to kick you in the dick with golf shoes. Now look here, I can already hear you guys out there pleading, Derek, go easy. It's just an indie horror title. This is a project that had hopes and dreams attached to it. No. I paid $20 for this bullshit, and now I'm gonna get my money's worth. Dawn of Fear is supposed to be a horror title that taps into the spirit of 90s survival horror games with inspirations like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Now, when a game promotes itself as a retro throwback title, it means one of two things. Either one, they're using nostalgia to try to lure people into playing their game, which sadly works just as well as dangling keys in front of a fucking baby. 90s survival horror. And like babies, we fall for it every single time. If the game doesn't do what Dusk and Ion made, oh shit, sorry, we can't use that title anymore. I forgot there's an old 80s power metal band out there throwing lawsuits around like it was an extension of their dicks. All because people are naming video games that sound like, you know, something similar to the fucking band name. If the game doesn't do what Dusk and Ion Fury did for the retro throwback 90s FPS games, then don't play it because it's not paying tribute to that style of gaming.
It's a trap!
So in Dawn of Fear, you play as Alex, who one night gets a call from a gentleman named Ethan, who I can only assume is his stepmother's attorney, and Ethan informs Alex that his stepmother has committed suicide and he'll need to visit the house in order to settle all the remaining affairs. While Ethan sits in the main foyer, getting all the paperwork in order, he tells Alex to have a look around his childhood home. Little does Alex know that his childhood home is now a place of evil, filled with jank frame rates and monstrous, nightmarish glitches. Oh right, yeah, there's zombies and monsters too, but they're not as terrifying as the glitches, trust me. Dawn of Fear moves pretty quick. You don't have to wait long before encountering your first enemy. Once that happens, everything goes tits up. After your first enemy encounter, you return to the main hall to find Ethan dead and obtain Ethan's Colt 45. Now spoiler alert folks, if you don't want me to spoil one of the game's better moments, then skip ahead. I don't know what time code to skip to because I haven't made the video yet. Just ballpark it, you'll be fine. Finding Ethan dead in the main hall is actually an incredible sequence, from the camera angle that tracks Alex as he makes his way down the hall to seeing Ethan in the distance crucified across the entrance door. Alright, with Alex now armed, enemies are generated in areas that previously were unoccupied. Now there's really no reason to ever fight the zombies. They're slow, you can literally lure them into a corner and just juke them. Now you might find yourself worried that if you're within arm's reach of the zombies, they'll be able to attack you, but I don't think your hitbox is that big. I had more zombies attacking me while trying to knife them than running around, so feel free to play risky. Like in any retro survival horror title, collecting items and solving puzzles is the name of the game. And I will admit the puzzle system in Dawn of Fear is probably its strongest feature. They're not cheap puzzles, each one you encounter varies in difficulty, and honestly the hardest part of the game for me, other than hoping the game didn't crash before I could reach my next save point, was the fucking chess puzzle. You see, I don't play chess. I'm more of a checkers kind of guy. If I'm speaking truthfully, I can't help but feel personally attacked with the inclusion of this puzzle, but I digress. Opposite of the puzzle system is the combat system, and combat works here like it did back in '96. You have to position your character at a safe enough distance away from the enemy before taking aim and firing. One fun fact is enemies go down in half the hits that it takes in Resident Evil when using the pistol, which is awesome. 2 shots will down a standard zombie enemy type, giving the player a few seconds to pass before the enemy recovers, and then 2 more shots will put him down for good. Again, much like with the original Resident Evil trilogy, I advised against fighting your enemies due to how scarce ammo is and how easy evading enemies are. Just like the good old days, boss battles require you to lure your enemy into a trap in order to deal more damage, with the exception of the final boss, and they don't really last too long either. I've got to be honest, I only found the bosses challenging when the tank controls and camera angles worked in tandem to screw me over, but otherwise the boss battles are very true to the style that they're trying to imitate. Alright guys, spoiler alert alert number 2, if you don't want to hear about one of the game's creepy surprise enemies, you best be skipping along. There was one enemy that I encountered that really caused me to scream oh shit and retreat. It's actually a pretty clever sequence because up until the time you reach this enemy, the only foe that you've had to contend with were zombies. There's a room upstairs with 2 zombies and a balcony outside with some wooden boards creating a bridge for you to get from one balcony to the other. Well, once you get to the other side, you're instantly introduced to this fucking guy, looking like something out of The Suffering, and if you're also like me, retreating back to the bridge for safety, you'll now realize that you're fucking stuck between the zombies you left alive on your left and this fucking thing on your right. It was a moment in the game that I actually had to give credit to because it was very well played. I wasn't expecting it, and it actually put me in quite of a pickle. Also, completely off topic, but can we take a moment to address the fact that there's all these weird places in this house that obviously could not have been built within the last few years after Alex's stepmother went crazy. They had to have existed for quite some time, and yet Alex remembers none of these things or never stumbled upon them when he was a kid. And the house in this game is big. I mean, I actually lost track of doors that needed to be unlocked. It was very easy to get turned around. If we were playing a hide-and-seek video game, this house would be like ultra nightmare hard difficulty. So yeah, I just found it funny that there was no acknowledgement from Alex regarding any of these insane surroundings that he would find himself in. I mean, come on, dude. There's one bookcase in the study that you absolutely do not remember being there, but you're absolutely fine with the fact that there's a prison behind the basement wall of the greenhouse. Like, fucking LOL. Now, one thing I do want to give praise to is the sound design and the music. The sound effects are incredibly well designed. Case in point, the guns. They sound powerful, and you're actually able to differentiate between weapons, like the handgun and the magnum. Each weapon has their own unique sound, and no sound effect is rehashed or used twice. Now, I think the enemy sound effects could use some work, and not so much the bosses or the bigger enemies as much as the zombies. The zombies have a shuffling sound effect that you can always tell when they're in the room walking towards you, but the only time I ever hear them groan or moan is when there's a female zombie, and most of the time it sounds like she's saying, there's not a lot of variety with the zombies, and they're the enemies that you encounter most often, so it kind of gets redundant after a while. Also, I can't confirm that the zombies are saying killer, but if they are, I think that's some pretty cool subtext, given the fact that Alex's stepmother, Jessica, believes that because Alex survived the car crash, he is in fact the killer of his father and his little brother Max. Now again, I don't know if that's what they're saying, or if that was the point that the devs were trying to make, but if that is, that's pretty cool. Now going back to the soundtrack is made up of various original compositions, and they're all beautifully unsettling in their own right. The one thing I admired about this game was that each room had its own composition, and that's not to say that there wasn't any repetition. There were certainly rooms that you'd hear the same music in, but it didn't happen that often. I was glad to see that the developers didn't take the easy way out, because all too often now, indie developers get wrapped up in free sound libraries and free music libraries. In order to cut down on the work, they'll repeat the same music over and over again in almost every area of the game, if not the entire game. Unfortunately, audio in the entertainment industry is often viewed as minute, a very small detail, but I was happy to see that these developers did not share that same ideology. So what were my final thoughts on Dawn of Fear? Simply put, this is the most fucked game I have ever had the misfortune of playing in order to review. The game is riddled with bugs and errors and glitches. It even crashed on me while I was playing. I've never had a PS4 game crash on me. There were so many times when I'd walk into a new room, but the game hadn't loaded any of the level assets, so I'd basically be floating in fucking oblivion. Then if you're lucky, suddenly everything would just clip into existence. I mean, honestly, it's really disorienting. Also, the health damage system really needs some serious overhaul, because sometimes Alex would react to being hurt just like in Resident Evil 2 and 3. He'd showcase a limp while holding his side, but other times he would seem fine, and I'd just have to check my journal to see if I was at death's door or what. And also, the journal health system thingy, I feel like was a really thought out concept, but the execution could have been a lot better. Just to clarify, the player's health is determined by how dirty or crumpled your journal pages are, which again sounds great in concept, but there was really never any introduction or tutorial in the game that told me that was going to be my health system. So for half of the game, I went around with dirty pages, just thinking that that's how it's supposed to be. Come to find out, I was on danger getting one-shotted by zombies fucking all the time. Honestly, if you asked me to tell you what kind of a game this is, I couldn't, because it's not. It's really just an early access tech demo at best, and an expensive one at that. It's definitely not worth the $20 price tag, so if you're looking into buying Dawn of Fear and playing the game for yourself, better wait for it to go on sale. Now, I do want to close this review on a positive note. Dawn of Fear has a really awesome story that shows the developers had ambition. It's not just a game playing on the retro survival horror PS1 style video game trope in order to make a buck, although again, I can't stress enough, $20 fucking dollars, but I really loved everything that the devs tried to do. I mean, I loved walking upstairs and then all of a sudden, a horde of zombies bust out of a room, inconveniencing you just a little bit more. Like, that little detail was a very classic survival horror thing to do, and it helped make the experience feel authentic. I love the fact that Ethan was crucified on the front door. It was a bold move that came right out of the gate early on in the game and visually worked very well. Now, I will admit it was a bit disappointing to never face off against what had killed him at that moment, which could have served for a good combat introduction, but overall was a good sequence. The game settings are beautiful. I really enjoyed the look of the game. I mean, all the settings were just beautifully designed. There was a lot of detail to them, and honestly, sometimes it was just nice walking around the mansion and really taking in the scenery. Now, I've seen complaints of the character and enemy animations needing to be more polished, and I do agree with that assessment to an extent, but the animations were pretty fluid and worked well with the game as it is. Now, I would have much rather seen more time and effort go into the character models than anything. Now, the creature designs look really good. All of the zombies and strange creatures, even the bosses, they all look really good, but like Alex's character model is a bit basic. His character model looks too smooth. There's not a lot of fine detail that you would normally find in a AAA title, and it's a bit off-putting when you look at the character model against the fantastically detailed backgrounds. Now, I know you could easily argue that this plays into the retro video game aesthetic. The only problem is Dawn of Fear is a retro-style survival horror title created using modern technology. Now, if they had created the game using the same engine that Capcom used to create Resident Evil 2 and 3, that would be a whole different story. But because this game is made in the Unreal Engine, Unreal 4 to be specific, anything with less than adequate details just comes off as raw. Backtracking a little bit, I loved the concept of Dawn of Fear as a whole. The story is simple, but the subject matter involving necromancy is quite refreshing. It was nice seeing zombies that weren't the result of some viral outbreak or nightmarish creatures that were the manifestation of the antagonist's subconscious. Now again, I was totally engaged in the story of Dawn of Fear, and while I was interested in learning more about what was going on, the story at times was hard to understand, mostly due to the language barrier between myself and the developer's English translations. Quite often the sentences didn't make sense because of the grammar, and other times it was just like silly little mix-ups, like Alex calling Jessica Abby whilst having a conversation with Abby about Jessica. I say this with absolute and complete sincerity that I would love to see Dawn of Fear reworked by the original developers, but also with the help of like a bigger studio, and of course a bigger budget always helps. The developers had ambition, I can see it, I felt it. I just don't believe that they had the adequate skills to really bring this nightmare to life. And that's totally okay, I'm not dogging them for trying to make a game, but it does suck to pay $20 for something that really could have been kick-ass and you can see the potential, it's just not there. I mean, this game could have been like the next Evil Within. And if it ever does get a rework, change the camera to OTS, obviously no tank controls, maybe get some motion capture on those cutscenes, and of course you gotta have voice actors. Of course design an old school version of the game that players could unlock involving tank controls and fixed camera angles, but honestly, the game better suits the modern age. I don't think you'd need it. Real quick before I forget, there's a room in the house where the devs have redesigned Chris Redfield's brown leather jacket, which served as his alternate costume in the original Resident Evil and was also seen at his desk in Resident Evil 2. On the small table to the left is a typewriter, and when Alex interacts with the typewriter, he explains that if he had an ink ribbon, maybe he could ... This was a very cool little tribute to Resident Evil that I was happy to see in the game. It's little details like that that really set you apart from the other people who falsely proclaim that their games are inspired by something just to lure people into playing it. Even though this game frustrated the hell out of me due to its inability to perform, I'd still like to take the time to thank the developers for making the game and giving me a chance to play it. Please guys, whatever you do, try to rework the game, pitch it to bigger studios, because I can see the potential in Dawn of Fear, I can see how great it could be, and I really think you guys have a series on your hands, you know, like multiple solid games in an actual series. I think it could be really good for the survival horror genre. So take that extra step, take the initiative to get out there, keep honing your skills, try to connect with other people that can help you make this a much better experience, and actually, if it's good enough, you guys might even be able to charge $60 for it next time. But that's it for this one, guys and gals. I'm Derek with GameSomniac, and this has been our review of Dawn of Fear. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more content just like it. If you'd like to know more about the game, or even tell us about your experience with the game, be sure to leave us a comment below. We're always up for discussions. And for all of your gaming, entertainment, news, and more, be sure to keep it locked right here at GameSomniac. Bye-bye!